And now it's time for Power of Prophecy with your host, former professor at the University of Texas at Austin, career United States Air Force officer, and best-selling author, Texe Mars.
Hello, friends. This is Texe Mars. Welcome to another edition of Power of Prophecy. Beaming at you from Austin, Texas, going around the world, and all because of prophecy. You know, the Bible they say, is 1/3 of prophecy. I've never really counted it up. But I do know that the book of Revelation says that Jesus is the very spirit of prophecy. Isn't that amazing? It really is the spirit of prophecy. That means it must be very powerful. These pastors that don't know anything about prophecy, that don't care about it, I don't know about them. But I'll tell you, I really love it. I care about it. Of course, there's all kinds of theories and things out there and different ideas. I listen to everybody because, you know, maybe somebody's got something that's right from the Bible. And that's what it takes. Now, today I have a guest on, and he sent me a book recently, and I looked at it. I thought, boy, I don't know about this book. But it's a very interesting book. Now, this guest, Edward Henry, I've had on several times. And I'll probably have him on several more times, I'm sure, because he's a fine Christian man. I've met both he and his wife. Juan and I met him and had a great time. And so, you know, he's just a good guy, right? But he really cares about the Lord. Edward Henry. Let me tell you a little bit about Ed Henry. I guess I could have him do it, but you know, he'd have to brag. I can say things about him, and he can just smile, but. If he said it, he'd probably think he was bragging. So let me just say that he was a Catholic. He went to a Catholic high school, went to Notre Dame, the famous, I guess it's like the epitome of being a Catholic is to go to Notre Dame University, went to Notre Dame. Then he went to a Jesuit law school. Oh, yes, he's a Jesuit. Well, he's not really, but he went to a Jesuit law school. And so you think he's a hardened Catholic, but in fact, God rescued him just like he rescued me, although I was not a Catholic. But he rescued Edward Henry and brought him out of that into the light, and he's a Christian now. Isn't that that's a wonderful story? And it's true. And lo and behold, he writes books. He's written books that are exposing the Catholic Church. And Judaism as well. In fact, one of my favorite books is Solving the Mystery of Mystery Babylon. Now, when you get into Mystery Babylon, you know, Revelation 18 and all, I tell you, it's fascinating, isn't it? And so he pretty well has solved that, I'll tell you. And it brings the Jewish religion of Judaism and Catholicism together. You know, a lot of people say, well, the Catholic Church, that's the whore in the last days. That's Mystery Babylon. Watch out for Vatican. Watch out for, you know, the Pope. But then there are others that say, no, it's the Jews. The Jews are it. They're everything. Don't pay any attention to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is wonderful. They're Christian. Watch out for the Jews. Well, Edward Henry has an integrated approach. He just, you know, whatever is evil, there's your problem, the evil. And so he's done a great job on solving the mystery of Babylon the Great. It's a big book with a lot of information in it. Now, with all of that said, let me just tell you about his most recent book. It's entitled, now get this, The Greatest Lie on Earth. Wow. We're going to learn about the greatest lie on earth. The subtitle is Proof That Our World is Not a Moving Globe. Well, is this a flat earth theory? Oh, well, we're going to talk to Edward about that. A lot in this book. And let's see, it's how many pages? Oh, I guess with footnotes, it's over 500 pages. And I have not read it fully, but I'll tell you, I read enough of it to know that it's extremely interesting. I especially like the parts talking about the Kabbalah, because I've been studying the Kabbalah, the system of magic and the occult found in the Judaism religion. And suddenly, here it is. He says the Kabbalah is at the ground basis of this horrible lie that we've all been fed. So, without further ado, let me introduce Edward Henry. How are you, Edward?
I am well. Thank you for that kind introduction, Texe.
You know, you're an attorney. I should have said that. He is an attorney. You went to...
Try not to hold that against me.
Everybody's going to hold that against you. Always, Edward.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
You know, I had a lawyer friend. He took a case. I actually sued here in the ministry unjustly, I might add. And, so he took the case. He's a Christian from Oklahoma City. So I was talking to the guy, and you'll like this, Ed. He said, so what do you want me to say in this affidavit? I said, well, just tell the truth. He said, I know, but what would you like me to say? And I said, well, just, tell the truth. He said, Texe, I'm an attorney. There's the truth, and then there's the truth.
Well, I'd like to consider myself a recovering lawyer.
A recovering lawyer, okay. Well, you're very brilliant. I know that you've taught it for the FBI and Drug Enforcement Agency. You're really at the very peak of your career. Now, this book. Why did you write this book? How did you discover the greatest lie on earth, Edward?
Well, interesting. I was researching, as I typically am doing, and I came across a video, a title of which was The Flat Earth Conspiracy. Now, at the time, I'm thinking to myself, oh, so now the conspirators are trying to put off the earth as being flat as a way of discrediting us, those who are revealing the nature of this conspiracy. And that's what I'm thinking to myself. I'm thinking, this will be interesting. I wonder what this is about. So I clicked on it and I listened to it. And I was immediately introduced to this concept of the earth being flat. Now, I, for a long time, have been a geocentrist. That the idea that the earth was the center of our system. Okay, that I adhered very much to what Tycho Brahe, his model of geocentrism was, and that's certainly the minority position, but it's not unpopular. Okay, but this idea of flat Earth, I quite frankly at the time thought was just plain kooky. Okay, as I watched this, there was a explanation that was so clear to me. And what happened was all of the Bible passages that I could never quite understand, that really did not compute in my mind, suddenly were given meaning. Suddenly I now understood what these Bible passages meant. And it hit me like a flash that in fact the heliocentric model that I've been taught, that you've been taught, that the population has been taught through public education and even the Christian schools is a massive deception. And that what they're doing in the heliocentric model is concealing God, His glory, His creation, and our uniqueness in His creation. Think about it. If the earth is flat and the planets, the stars, and the moons are in the firmament, just as the Bible says, then that makes us unique in all of creation. We are not a planet that is careening through space, that's one of many millions and millions of other planets that are revolving around millions and millions of other stars, an insignificant part of the universe that is made up of empty space. We are, in fact, unique. That God created us uniquely in His image, just as the Bible says. And so I started researching this. And everything I turned up, from what the Bible says to what it says in true science, demonstrated to me that, in fact, the earth was flat, that the earth is immovable, that we are God's unique creation made in His image, and that the system that we've been taught, this idea of a solar system where the earth is revolving around the sun, is a massive deception. intergenerational, inspired by Satan himself.
Well, that would be a great lie. Now, when you say the earth is flat, you don't necessarily mean that it's not a circle. It's not. Is it square and flat? I mean, what are you really saying here?
Well, it is, as the Bible says, it is a circle. It is a flat circle, with the rim of that circle being Antarctica. Those who've traveled down to Antarctica have found that there are massive ice walls, vertical ice walls, that surround Antarctica, that are the border of Antarctica, that are about 100 to 200 feet high. The early explorers explained that clearly. It is the case now, but through treaties, any attempt to explore Antarctica is by any private individual is thwarted. You have to get a permit from various countries. It's pretty much locked down by treaty. And in fact, if you tried to go to the South Pole, they'll tell you that what they have designated as the South Pole is not truly the South Pole. Why? Because there is no South Pole. Now, they will come up with an argument that, well, it changes because of the ice flow moves, and we have, and so therefore it's not technically the South Pole. Yes, not technically the South Pole because there is no South Pole. There's a South Rim, okay? If you can think of it as a plate, the Earth being a plate, with the center of the plate being the North Pole, and the rim being south, everywhere you travel from north being south. So it would be like the spokes on a wheel. If you can imagine a bicycle wheel with the spokes going from the center, which would be the Arctic Circle, and then going out, and the tire around it being Antarctica, and with the continents now sprawled out on that wheel, that would explain how the Earth is configured, if they can visualize it in their mind.
What is very much in vogue is this idea of climate change or global warming. And I'm told that there is, maybe this somehow fits, and maybe I'm on a tangent here, but you tell me, okay, you're the guy who's really researched this. They tell me that there's 10 times as much ice in the South Pole as there are, as there is in the North Pole. So because they first centered in on the North Pole, and they said, the polar bears were drowning, the ice was melting. Oh, woe is us. We're all going to be inundated with water on every coast, and the islands are going to disappear and all that stuff. Well, it didn't happen. Still hasn't happened. But if global warming was true, that would happen. They said the North Pole is melting. Now we know it's not melting, but they said that suddenly, I kept reading these little bitty articles, and it says the South Pole has 10 times as much ice as the North Pole, and that its ice is growing every year. So I was trying to figure all that out, because climate change and global warming is a bunch of nonsense to me. It's just proven untrue. But is there anything in what I've said that relates to what you've said?
Well, I just know that the global warming is another hoax designed to tax us blind.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? To control the population. As far as the details of it, I am not well versed in the specific details of global warming. But from what I know and what I have found, it's scientifically unsupportable, this theory of global warming.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. Now, they got about 20 years, of a global cooling that's taking place. They don't know how to explain that. Of course, they tried to with all these silly charts and everything that are proven to be, just false. And Al Gore's embarrassed now. He's hiding out, I guess, somewhere or other. Now, let's talk about this geocentric versus heliocentric. I had a guy one day, he came to my office here, and he said, I got a book for you. And he had written a book, and it was about geocentrism. And he explained to me, sort of as you did, but the book wasn't really good like your book. Your book explains it a lot better, and it's more interesting to read. But anyway, he was a nice guy, so when he left the office, I thought, well, he's a smart guy, but doesn't know what he's doing. So I put the book in my bookshelf. It's still there, by the way. Maybe I ought to get it out and send it to you. Maybe you can make heads or tails of it. But what is geocentrism, and what is the common theory, which is heliocentrism. Would you please explain those two, geocentrism versus heliocentrism?
Okay, well, the common view of heliocentrism is what people have been taught in school, with the sun being, with us being as part of a solar system, where the sun is the center of the system, and then we are one of many planets that revolve around the sun. Okay? We orbit the sun, and we are a sphere, as that theory goes, orbiting the sun. At the same time, we are spinning, as we're orbiting, we are spinning once every 24 hours.
All right.
Okay? So, now, stop and think about that. We are orbiting the sun, okay, and we are many millions of miles away from the sun, okay, orbiting. Now, as we orbit, you look up in the sky at night, and you can see the North Star, interestingly enough. Now, the North Star is always north, hence the name. Polaris is called the North Star. Now, we're supposed to be over 93 million miles away from the sun, going around the sun in a circuit of 93 million miles. The North Star is supposed to be, according to what they say, over 400 light years away from Earth. That is, if you're traveling at the speed of light, it would take you 400 years to get to the North Star. So, 400 light years away, it's north of us. Now, this is what they say. I'm just telling you what the heliocentric view is. Now, stop and think about it. How, if we are traveling around the sun, and we are approximately 93 million miles away from the sun, that means that once we get to the other side of the sun, as we travel, that North Star is traveling with us? Think about it. How could the North Star be traveling in perfect synchronization with the movement of the Earth around the sun? That right away should cause people to question the heliocentric view. How could we be moving at this tremendous speed, okay, around the sun, while the North Star at 400 light years away is keeping in perfect synchronization with the Earth? And by the way, we're supposed to be orbiting the sun at 67,000 miles per hour, while we are rotating at 1,000 miles per hour. That's the heliocentric view.
Now, I suppose some people would say, well, that's gravity that's keeping everything in relationship to each other. The forces of gravity are pulling on each planet or each body. Although I would think that it would differ by the volume of the body.
Okay, well that's good. You raised a very interesting issue. Let's talk about gravity. Gravity was a theory that Isaac Newton came up with to explain why, when we're spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, people don't fly off into space from the centrifugal force. Because stop and think about it. If the Earth is approximately 25,000 miles in diameter, and it rotates once every 24 hours, that means that the Earth necessarily, at the equator, is spinning at the rate of approximately 1,000 miles per hour. Okay? Well, as you know, when you spin something at 1,000 miles per hour, there's tremendous centrifugal force pulling outward on anything that's attached to that body. And so the laws of physics will require something to keep that body attached to whatever's spinning, right?
Right.
Well, Isaac Newton said, that's gravity. Okay? Gravity is what keeps you attached to this spinning ball. Well, here's the problem with gravity. According to his theory of gravity, the force of gravity is the same no matter where you are on an object. Under the theory of gravity, all objects are attracted to one another by their mass. So one mass is attracted to another mass. Now, that can never be replicated in an experiment. They've never proven that. It's a theory. He just made it up, okay? And I'll tell you the source of that theory in just a minute. But he came up with this theory, which has never been proven, by the way. It's just a way of explaining why it is people don't fly off into space. He said, it's gravity. Okay, this mystical force that keeps people attached. Well, stop and think about it. If the gravity is the same, and it has to be under his theory, all the way around the Earth, it's of equal force, that means that the person at the equator, as he travels north, the centrifugal force becomes less. So, and the reason the centrifugal force becomes less is as he travels north, and the North Pole would be the pivot, the axis upon which the Earth is supposed to be spinning, the Earth's diameter actually gets less with regard to, in relation to the spin of the Earth. So as you travel north to the Tropic of Cancer, okay, the spin will be less than it would be at the equator. As you go into the United States, it's probably approximately 700 miles per hour, let's say. If you travel north even further, and let's say you get to within 100 feet, okay, of the Arctic Circle, okay, if you get within 100 feet of the Arctic Circle, you would be crushed by gravity. Why is that? Because you would be traveling at about 1/4 mile per hour, according to the spinning Earth theory. There would be a 4,000-fold reduction in the speed at which you'd be traveling, because the 1,000 miles per hour at the equator is reduced to about 1/4 mile per hour within about 100 feet of the Arctic Circle. So your weight, assuming you're a 175-pound man, your weight would be now 700,000 pounds crushing you to Earth if you travel to the North Pole. And in fact, at every point as you move north, you would get heavier and heavier. Why? Because the laws of gravity are that the gravitational pull remains the same no matter where you are on Earth. So the gravitational pull that acts against the 1,000-mile-per-hour spin at the equator is the same gravitational pull that would act against you at 100 feet from the Arctic Circle, which means that force would be 4,000 times the force that you would be feeling at the equator. But you would not have the same centrifugal force.
I'm a little confused here. I'm going to there's a lot of people here that listen to this program that are very intelligent. They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're plumbers and carpenters, but they're very intelligent. I'm going to let them calculate that. It's pretty heavy, but I'm thinking of the same in relation to gravity. If it's, if we feel the same, if I go deep into a cave, I feel like the force of gravity is the same as if I'm out of the cave. I don't know why that would be, though. I mean, is there something called gravity within the cave? Is that what there is? If you're in an elevator, I've always wondered, if you go in an elevator and it suddenly crashes to the ground, maybe the cables break. If right before it hit the ground, if you jumped up in the air, would you be saved? But they say, no, you're still traveling. Even if you're in the air, you're still traveling. And I go to the space people, the astronauts. The minute that they're in the air, that suddenly they say they don't have gravity and they can float. That's sort of odd. Why can they float when they get up in the air, but we can't float here on Earth? So all these things are very strange, aren't they?
Yeah, well, let me explain something. There is no such thing as gravity, first of all. The reason things fall to the ground is density. So, for instance, Newton's famous apple that fell off the tree and hit him in the head, and he decided, it's gravity. Well, no, that apple fell because it is denser than air. Things fall to the ground because they are denser than the surrounding air. Helium floats. You can have a helium balloon. A helium balloon is not some mystical anti-gravity device. It's very simple. It's lighter than air. Okay? That's why it floats. And so this idea that gravity is some mystical force that must be explained. No, if the Earth is not spinning, you have no need for gravity. The need for gravity was a need that Isaac Newton was addressing because of the assumed theory that the Earth was spinning. If you stop the Earth from spinning and the Earth is flat, you have no need for gravity. And you have no need for gravity because gravity does not exist. You don't need gravity on a flat Earth. Gravity is something you need in a spinning ball, and gravity is a mystical force which doesn't actually exist. It is a deception designed to explain to people why it is they can walk upside down on a ball.
Okay, well, this is, I tell you, this is a very weighty subject, and I want to get into the fact that if this is a hoax, if people actually know it is, and whatever it is, 9/11, JFK assassination, whatever it is, the hoax, there are insiders who know about it. Why do they want to pull this off? What is their purpose behind it? And I know your book has a lot about the Kabbalah and how everything fits together. In fact, you sort of put, let's just call it Satanism at the very beginning of it, or at the foundation, but you add that with Darwinism, and then you tacked on Marxism, and so it all sort of fits together. I mean, if there's a chink in one thing, then these conspiratorialists know the whole system will fall. That's where you really come at in your book, The Greatest Lie. You're saying it's all based on a lie, and that lie begins here, and it keeps expanding outward, right?
That's right.
Okay.
This idea of a spinning ball, the earth being a spinning ball, is the foundation, the cornerstone for the New World Order. Once people realize the degree of the deception that they have been under, and they understand that God, in fact, created the heavens and the earth, that God is in heaven, that there isn't an empty space up there. Because, see, they have to remove God from heaven in order to remove God from people's minds. That's the point. The point is they have to remove God from people's consciousness, from their thoughts, in order to get them to believe their other myths, their other conspiracies. Darwinism would have no chance without heliocentrism. Heliocentrism is the very foundation of Darwinism. Marxism, communism would have no chance without Darwinism. They all build upon one another, and it all comes tumbling down if you remove the cornerstone of the whole thing, and that's heliocentrism.
Wow.
The idea that we are simply a planet revolving in an endless space around a sun, which is one of many millions of suns, that we came into an existence not out of God's creation, out of Him speaking us into existence, but rather out of a big bang. This silliness is a fairy tale that they have gotten people to believe. And there's no way that they would ever be able to sell evolution without heliocentrism.
Well, that's true. And evolution is just totally hokey. I mean, it's just nonsense. Well, I tell you what, we're going to have to go for a little break here. This is quite interesting. Folks, stay with us because we've got Edward Henry here. And when we come back, Ed, I'm going to ask you, what is the basis of this? How does Darwin and Marx fit in? But most of all, I'm going to ask you about the moon landing hoax. They say we landed on the moon in, it was 69, but we haven't gone back. And you show in your book that these moon rocks are all fakes. And that's incredible in itself. But the moon landing, why is that a hoax? And it is a hoax. But why? Why do they have to do that? Why do they have to lie about it? Why even now are they still lying about it? You would think 69 is 47 years ago. It'd be easy to go to the moon now, but they seem to have difficulty. And then I want to get to the Kabbalah. So all of that in the next 30 minutes. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. We got a big agenda here ahead. I'm Tex Mars. You're listening to my guest, Edward Henry. We're talking about the greatest lie on earth. Do you believe the earth is flat? Well, there's a lot in this book. It's quite interesting. I'll be right back after this brief message. What is the greatest lie on earth? This is Tex Mars again. I want to offer this book to you by Edward Henry. It's about, 400 pages. No, wait just a minute. Hold it. How many pages is this? This is 500 pages. That's right, 500 pages. Well, I like it even more. I'm sort of a guy that, I like to really get into it and really read it and just gets absorbed in my mind. So 500 pages, that's just great. Well, you'll want this book, The Greatest Lie on Earth. Now, you may say, oh, this is incredible. I don't believe this. Who is this Edward Henry? Well, I can vouch for Edward Henry. Now, this book is another story. I want you to read it for yourself. I want to hear from you. I get the greatest letters from people. And I know some people are going to write to me immediately and say, oh, this is just nonsense. I was taught in elementary school. The heliocentric view. Well, maybe you were, but, read this book, because I'll tell you, the sections in it, that's why I was giving you the length of it, 500 pages, because the sections in it on Judaism, oh yes, Judaism has something to do with this. The Judaic religion is man-made traditions, Jesus said, and it comes from Babylon. And the devil he was alive back then, working hard. He is God of this world. And the Jews, Kabbalah came out of Babylon, as well as Egypt and other places. So, you can learn about Judaism just from reading this book. So it's really fantastic. Communism, Judaism, Marxism. And you read about people like Isaac Newton. We understand that he was a Christian, wasn't he? Well, maybe. But then what was he doing with the Jewish Kabbalah? Why was he so intrigued by that? And his books somehow use the Kabbalah. So I think there's so much here that you may not even believe. You may not really understand the concept of geocentrism, but there's so much in this book. It's like 4 or 5 books in one, and I want you to have it. Now, and then I want you to read it and tell me what you think, okay? I'd like to know what you think. I really believe that God is going to reveal to people's hearts the truth. And I know we have true Christians listening to this program. That's the reason why we've been successful. We've been on the air, I don't know, over 28 years. We've been on the air. And that's because we hit that chord in Christians' hearts. So please let me know. Now, this book, we're going to ask $25 for it because it's so big and so, bulky and has so much information in it. $25 for the book, The Greatest Lie on Earth. You can just call it The Lie, The Big Lie, okay? Let's call it The Big Lie so you don't have to remember the title. But the title is The Greatest Lie on Earth. Now call us and order it Monday through Friday. We'll have a very friendly person here to take your call and ask for it. $25 plus $5 shipping and handling. That'll get it to you. Of course, if you're not receiving our newsletter, Power of Prophecy, we'll send that on to you. Okay? You'll get that. And now's an exciting time. I'm having several stories on the election and so forth. But I'll tell you, folks, this election to me is not as exciting as books like The Greatest Lie on Earth. Elections come and go, but great ideas, they remain, and they grab people's brains and minds. Think of Karl Marx. How many men died, were tormented, tortured because of the horrible writings of Karl Marx? Wow. That far exceeds anything that Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or whatever would have, doesn't it? And so that's why we offer these books. You may not be able to get this book, may not be at a bookstore, but you'll be able to get it here. Just came out, by the way. So we're offering it to you for $25. Add $5 shipping and handling. Get it by calling us toll free, 1-800-234-9673. Or go to our website, powerofprophecy.com. Powerofprophecy.com. Or just put my name in. It's tough to spell, I know. Texe Mars, T-E-X-E, Texe Mars, M-A-R-R-S, all one word, .com, TexeMars.com. You can get the book there. Or you can write to us and put a little note in it and say, hey, Tex, send me that book about the lie, the greatest lie on earth. And we'll get it right off to you. I'm sure Edward will get as many copies made up as we need to as we go along here. So send it to me and with a little note and tell me you want this book, $25 plus $5 shipping and handling. Okay? Our address here is Power of Prophecy. We're right where we've been for, about 25 years. 1708 Patterson Road, Patterson Road, Austin, Texas, 78733. By the way, Jerry's my broadcast engineer here in the studio. Did I ever tell you one day I came to work here, it was about 10 in the morning, and there were two guys in our backyard. They were there, they had a folder of some kind. They were just standing in our backyard. Folks, we're sort of in the country. Well, we are in the country. And there was nothing behind us. It goes all the way back to a creek in a lot of woods area. We're out of Austin, And so I went up to them. I said, "Can I help you, gentlemen?" They said, "We hope it's okay for us to be on your property. We're here doing a nature inventory." I said, "A nature inventory?" "Yes, we've been tasked by the city with figuring out which areas of the city and the county have endangered species, and we're looking for cave bugs and and I just they're on my property. They didn't even ask to come on. Now anybody can come on here. I mean, we have the door open, right? We have if they can stand the sign in the door which says that the truth shall make you free, and the Bible quote in John, if they can take that, they can come in, okay? But you're welcome to come in. Come in to see us sometime here. We're all going to be busy. We can't just stop but we will shake your hand, maybe offer you a cup of coffee or a Coke or something. So it's not that we dislike people, but these guys didn't even ask. They just showed up on our property. And all I could think of was they're going to find some little bug, and then we're going to be in all kind of trouble. So I told them, "Well, gentlemen, I know you're just doing your job, but I would prefer you leave my property." And they looked at me like, "Oh." And I said, I really don't believe in the environmental movement. I do believe in conservation. I believe in keeping things clean, pure, but I would appreciate your leaving my property." And they promptly left. They had instructions. If they got in any trouble, they'd leave. Did I ever tell you about that? You've been here a long time, working here, yeah. But they're doing this to all over the United States. And, there's huge areas of Austin that they cannot build on because they found some little bug. And I wish I could find it too, because I'd just step on it. But I was on a radio program with a guy one time, or a caller called in, and he said that he was like that. He's one of these crazy environmentalists. And I said, "Now, what would happen if you were walking down, a sidewalk, and you saw a little bug walking, and a kid walked across the street, right where the bug was, and a car came barreling down? Would you save the kid or the bug?" He said, "Oh, I would save the bug. It's endangered. There are plenty of kids, but there's not very many of that bug." And I thought, boy, that's brutal. That's inhuman. And that just shows you where these folks are at. I think Edward Henry, he's listened to us from home there. He'd understand the horror of that guy. That guy was sincere, though. He would save the bug and let the kid be hit by a car and die. It just showed me what was really in the hearts of the environmentalists. They were monsters. They didn't know it, but all right. Okay, the greatest lie on earth, $25 plus $5 shipping and handling. Now let's return to our regular program. I did mention to you, you'd get a free subscription to our Power of Prophecy newsletter, didn't I? Once you order this book. And when you order anything from us, we automatically extend your subscription. Automatically. So you just keep getting it. As long as you order something from us, we just keep sending it to you. And so many people write to us and say, "I'd love to get that newsletter." So that's how you get it. You just order something periodically from us. All right. We're back to Power of Prophecy. My guest today is Edward Henry, a very well-known, famous lawyer. And I suspect you're going to get more famous after this book comes out, Edward.
Well, let me tell you, you mentioned your newsletter. I always look forward to getting that. And interesting, a couple weeks ago, I got the newsletter, and I didn't have time to read it then, so I set it aside. And my wife is she's very neat and clean, and all the newspapers get thrown out. Well, somehow she threw out your newsletter.
Oh, no.
I was so disappointed. I always look forward to reading that. But anyway, getting back to the issue of my book and the issue it addresses, I understand how difficult this is going to be for many people. I'm sure they're rolling their eyes thinking this is just nutty, okay? I would have had the same impression had I not looked at the evidence and looked at the Bible passages and studied this thoroughly. I'm telling you, every scientific study that's ever been done, every scientific study shows the earth is absolutely stationary and does not move, and that's something that they do not tell you in school. They conceal that. From Airy's failure to the Michelson-Morley experiment, it shows the earth is completely stationary. And right now, what we are going through is a ridicule stage for the truth. The truth goes through a number of stages. The first stage is ridicule, and that's the stage that we're going through right now. And I think there was a German philosopher, Schopenhauer, who said that first, the truth is ridiculed, second, it's violently opposed, and third, it's accepted as being self-evident. Well, right now, it's the ridicule stage, and Satan has set it up where people have in their mind that only savages and ignorant people think that the earth is flat. But the Bible says friendship with the world is enmity with God. Love not the world nor the things in the world, okay? And one of the things in the world that that is really a problem for Christians is the pride of life. And as soon as they attack you and say that you're out of your mind, you're crazy, it right away plays into the pride of life. Nobody wants to be marginalized as being crazy, and so they want to go along with the program. Virtually every school, Christian or otherwise, teaches the heliocentric model. There is no geocentrism that's taught in Christian schools. And interesting, in Orwell's book, 1984, there was a conversation between O'Brien, who was a inter-party, high member of the inter-party, and he's talking to Winston Smith, who's the protagonist in 1984.
Yeah, he's an interrogator, really, sort of tormenting.
Yeah, yeah, and he says that, and O'Brien tells Winston, he says, we control matter because we control the mind. And Winston contradicted him. He says, you don't control matter. How can you control matter? And he said, we control a person's thought, and in that sense, we control matter. So, the earth doesn't actually spin at 1,000 miles per hour, but we've been taught to believe that. And so, in that sense, the New World Order, the conspirators, control matter because they can make us think that the earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour when all of our senses tell us that it's motionless, that we are not moving, okay? They can contradict our very senses and make us think things that are not true because they get us early. From the moment you walk into a school, the first object you see practically is a spherical globe. And you are conditioned to believe that that is the case.
You know, that is true about the globe. And I remember the first time I saw a map, they laid out the earth and they flattened it, you know, so you could see all the continents on one page. It wasn't a globe. It was flattened. And I couldn't make out the continents. I couldn't make out readily I couldn't, and it just seemed like it should be in a globe. So that's how they get your mind, you know, you don't even think of it as that way, as flattened, but you just think of it as a round globe. And that's true. There's so much like that, like my book, DNA Science and the Jewish Bloodline. It's just absolutely true that there are few true Israelites. They go all the way back, to the time of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. But the Jews keep telling us we are the true Israelites. We descend all the way back, and you've got to give us Israel while we deserve it and all that. But really, they're Khazars. But it's still tough to take. And actually, the racists love it. You know, they love to keep the Jews, the Jewish blood intact and consistent because they think something in the blood makes them evil. But you and I know it's the human heart that's evil. But anyway. You're so right about, how we're just programmed, like that terrible song, Hotel California, we're programmed to receive. People just believe it. And you're also right, Edward, in that they're frightened to be different. That's why, people find my ministry so tough, although many people are now coming around. They're going, wow, all these things are true. Do you think that your book, which probably 20 years ago you would not, you published it yourself through Great Mountain Publishing, 20 years ago probably would not have been able to be published just because of the economics and all that. And the internet, and I know you've got a website, and I want to know what your website is. I want people to go on that. But do you think now we're beginning to chink away at the lies? And maybe this is the greatest lie, but it's just another one of the many lies. Do you think we're beginning to break away, and maybe people are beginning to awaken? Maybe your book is part of this process, Edward?
Oh, I think so. I think that there was a famous episode when Andrew Jackson was defending New Orleans, and there was a fog, as I recall the episode, and one of his officers said, well, what are we going to do? We can't see them. He said, there'll come a moment when you will see them and you'll know what to do. The fog will clear. There's been a fog. This fog is clearing. And as things are falling apart economically, spiritually. Can you imagine I just can't imagine the Supreme Court ruling that people have, that sodomites have a right to marry. I mean, it's just absurd.
Oh, well, it's right.
Imagine something like that.
It's right, and it's been in the Constitution all these years. You haven't seen it. You're a constitutional lawyer, don't you know that, Ed?
Well, it's going to be taught in schools now.
Yeah.
It's going to be taught in schools now, and Christians are going to understand very soon that this idea of special privileges being given by the government to certain people that are going to conflict with God-given constitutional rights, the government privileges will win. Always have throughout history, and they always will. And so Christians will be persecuted when they take a stand against sodomite marriages. It's already started, okay, but it will happen in earnest, I think, not very long from now.
And people will think it's natural. There's no why did they ever oppose this? Well, it's just natural.
The first step. It's just the first towards degeneration.
It is.
Because what is next? What's the next sin? Because that's what we're talking about, that they're going to protect. See, the people have lost sight of the fact that government is one thing and one thing only. It is force. And so when the government gives a special privilege to a group of people, it is putting its force into play on that side. See?
Oh, yes.
So the sodomites now have the force of government on their side to compel people to do things that they don't want to do.
Boy, they're taking that force too, aren't they? They're cracking down on all of us that know better. Well, let's talk about the moon landing, because this is sort of a central part of your book. It's not the end all, but it is an important part. The moon landing, you agree with me that there was a hoax involved. And there's been so many books out, and we've offered a couple of them by Renee and others, that show the photographs that just don't make any sense. And even the astronauts seem to be embarrassed. But tell us about the moon landing, the hoax, and how this goes along with this geocentric view.
Well, NASA, its whole purpose is to conceal from people the nature of our world and to convince people that, in fact, the world is round. Because I know what people are thinking as they're listening to this interview. I've seen the world. I've seen the Earth. I've seen pictures of it. NASA has shown me that. Well, those photographs are hoaxes. In fact, NASA will admit that the photographs are actually constructed. They're not, most of them are computer generated. They will say that they're layers, that they put layers of upon layer of information that they get from satellites, and they paste them together in order to, and they have to do that. Why? Because there's no way they can conceal the fact that they are manufactured.
Wow, this is like Obama's birth certificate, all those layers of photoshopping on top of it.
Right.
Uh-huh.
There are a couple of them that early on they depicted as actual photographs of the Earth from space. Okay? And one of those photographs can be shown through Photoshop that it's been cropped. It's a cropped photograph. It's not. It's some sort of image of the Earth that's been cropped to make the Earth appear to be a round ball. But there's all kinds of evidence like that. For instance, if you compare one image of the Earth taken by NASA with another image from the same attitude of the Earth, you'll notice that the continents are not the same size from one year to the next. They change, they shrink, and they grow. They cannot keep their graphic artists straight as to how big the continents are. The continents are significantly different in size from one photograph to the other. It's really interesting to watch. They have duplicate clouds. Okay, you can see clearly in some of these images where they've cut and pasted using computer certain cloud formations that are next to one another. They're not actually there. They're just pasted on.
Now, there's another thing, too. You show in your book, you prove it, that NASA seems to have lost all of these films. They seem to, the moon walk and all that, the originals are all missing. How can something that historically important and worth probably $100 million or more to some famous collector somewhere, how could they be suddenly, we've just misplaced it? We don't have it anymore.
Their excuse with regard to the Apollo 11 videotapes in particular was that they were running short on videotapes, and so they needed tapes, so they taped over them. They actually made this excuse. The number of lies that they come up with is just incredible. And they've been caught red-handed fabricating images of the Earth from supposedly the space capsule. Bart Sibrel, in his film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, he got a videotape that he was probably not supposed to have. Somehow NASA sent it to him in one of his requests, and it shows an outtake that it was not supposed to be for public viewing, that shows them faking a picture of the moon using some kind of transparency against the window. It's absolutely fascinating. And most recently, they had an incident where an astronaut almost drowned in his spacesuit. Now, how does an astronaut drown in the empty vacuum of space? Now, they'll try to tell you that, it was a malfunction in the heating system, et cetera, et cetera. And now, by the way, they have retrofitted the spacesuits with snorkels in order to avoid drowning. And the reason he drowned is because all of these things are done in a large pool to make it appear as though it's space, the motions and so forth, the weightlessness. And they're filmed in pool, and you can actually see bubbles from time to time in some of these NASA films, and actually some of the films from the Chinese spacewalks that they do. And you can go on YouTube and you can see the bubbles that come up. So, and they've been caught time and time again.
Now you show also that I think it was Gus Grissom was horribly burned to death, and those astronauts. And by the way, I want people to get my video. The Eagle Has Landed, in which I also, it's sort of like Bart Sibrel's. It talks about all these things and the scandals and the deaths and so forth. Now, the astronauts themselves, all except for that one astronaut that loves to get publicity. What's his name? Buzz
Aldrin.
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin. That guy's a 33rd degree Mason, and everything is sort of Masonic, and he's sort of a nut. But except for him, the other astronauts, they don't like to get publicity. They don't want to come out. It's like they're sort of embarrassed that they were told a lie about this, and they don't like to meet the cameras nowadays, do they?
No, that's true. In fact, if you really want to understand the deception of the moon landings, watch the Apollo 11 news conference. They posted it on YouTube. Just type in Apollo 11 post-mission news conference and watch the demeanor of the astronauts.
Oh, I saw that picture you have in your book.
It's
man,
taking when you see it. They look like they're criminals on the dock, that they've just been charged with murder. They really looked oppressed. Like,
here these guys, they should be celebrating, should be high-fiving and wonderful and jubilant, and the whole world celebrating them, and they look morose and depressed. Yes. And you got all this in your book, and it's just, that was a stunner.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Gus Grissom. They murdered him. He knew that the Apollo moon missions would never succeed with the equipment that they had. And he, in fact, hung a lemon on the Apollo capsule. And I'm not sure if they called it the Apollo at that time, but one of the capsules, that in order to graphically display for the media what he thought of it. On the day that he died, they actually pumped pure oxygen into a capsule during testing. And he, before he actually went into that capsule, he asked Joe Shea, NASA's chief administrator, to go in the capsule with the other astronauts during the testing because he smelled a rat. He smelled a rat. He did not understand what was going on, and he was concerned. His life had already been threatened. In fact, they actually had him under guard because he had received many threats, and his impression was the threats were coming from within NASA. What they did was they pressurized that capsule with between 16.7 and 20.2 psi of pure oxygen. Now, most people who are not engineers don't understand the danger of pure oxygen. Pure oxygen is very volatile. And when you put it under pressure, it will actually cause things that are combustible to oxidize spontaneously and burst into flames. It is so dangerous. Engineers who know about oxygen under pressure, when they understood what they had put these astronauts through that day, considered what they were in as an oxygen bomb. Interesting, on that day, they changed the way the capsule door opened so that it opened from the outside in and it was bolted shut. It took about 8 minutes to open the capsule, and Grissom's son later was given access to the capsule, and he knew what he was looking for because he had already conferred with people who knew what to look for, and he actually found a fabricated metal plate hidden behind the switch panel that would cause a spark. Now, when you have a pure oxygen environment under pressure, that's all it takes for that thing to explode, and that's what happened. As soon as they went through their whatever checks they were doing in that capsule, a switch was thrown at a certain time, and that thing just burst into flames. Those astronauts did not have a chance.
They couldn't get out. They changed the door.
No.
That was a horrible situation. Yeah. Well, listen, we've only got about a minute. I wish we had more time.
What's very revealing is that night, it was 6:30 p.m. at night on Friday. Mm-hmm. That night, the FBI went to Grissom's home and searched his house and took all of his NASA files. Boy. So his body wasn't even cold, and they were already busting down, I shouldn't say busting down the door because I don't know how they made their entry, but they were already in the house, rifling through his stuff and seizing all of his documents that night.
That was all prearranged.
It was planned,
yeah.
And they were already ready to go to get the documents. He had taken copious notes of his findings that the Apollo moon missions just were not going to go.
Boy.
It was not possible with the equipment they had.
Well, I'll tell you, Edward, we run out of time. I wish we had more time. This is just getting interesting now. It's getting a little heated and hot. But I especially wanted to go through the Kabbalah. And I wanted to show people, I'm going to just point to your book here, how you show it's the undercurrent. It's the foundation of all the occultism and Satanism in the entire world. And it permeates these scientific theories and NASA and so forth. Everything, the Kabbalah, the Jewish Kabbalah, it's so important. Let's do another program on it and talk about that. Could we?
Okay, absolutely.
All right. Well, my guest today has been Edward Henry. His book, The Greatest Lie on Earth. It's a fascinating book. Whether you believe it or not, we'll read it and give it a try. See what you think. And I want to hear from you, because I know a lot of you are going to really find this interesting. Until next time, tune in each week and discover the power of prophecy.